Hello, welcome to Boyd County Public Library's program, your DIY embroidery on flour sack tiles. So that's exactly what we're going to show you how to do today. Hi, I'm Debbie Cosper. I have two hats today. I'm the director of the Public Library, and I'm also a member of the Embroiderers Guild of America, and I belong to the Tri-Area Needle Arts chapter. So I do embroidery of all kinds as a hobby and just because it's fun. So let me turn it over to my cohort here.
Hi, I'm Liz Alexander, and I also belong to the Embroiderers Guild, the local chapter of the Tri-Area Needle Arts. Have been a member for close to 30 years now, so I'm very passionate about embroidery, and I'm very happy to come to you with this DIY workshop.
Liz also is a professor and chair of a department at Marshall University.
Go hard.
Oh, well, that's all right. We'll let you do that. So what we're going to do today is we're going to tell you a little bit, kind of tell you what's in your kit and what we're going to do with it, what we're going to stitch, how to do some of the techniques, and then we're also going to show you how to do some fun stuff at the end, or at least some ideas of what you can do. One of the things with embroidery, it can be anything done through the eye of the needle. Whether it's sewing, you can do it on clothes, you can do it on all kinds of things. So let's talk about your kit for just a minute. So you should have gotten one of these, or if you didn't, this stuff is really easy to pick up just about anywhere. You should have gotten a flour sack towel that I'm sure that you could use for a small blanket afterwards. You should have gotten some DMC floss that tells you what colors we're using, and a needle, and it's sharp. We definitely are going to have to use a sharp needle within the fabric. We don't need that, Liz.
That's right.
We're going to show you a different time of transfer than we started out with. Okay, you got your needle. Oh, I know what else. You also got a blank one of these without all the writing on it, because that was how you're going to transfer it to your, oops, sorry, Liz, how you're going to transfer it to your towel. And then this will tell you our recommended colors and our recommended stitches. And as they tell us every time we go someplace, you can do whatever you want. If you want to do it in chartreuse and purple, do it. Make it your own. All right, now, Liz, tell us about some things that we might want to be able to have in addition to this.
All right, so a lot of people that do hand embroidery like to stabilize their fabric and put it in a hoop. So hoops come in lots of different shapes, sizes, and forms. So this one is just pretty simple, slides in and out. This is an example of a wooden hoop that's actually kind of square. And these two examples have a screw that you can use to tighten the outer ring, so your fabric stays in nice and tight.
Yeah, I can't do this while she's talking.
This is another form which just is spring-loaded that keeps your fabric tight.
Or you can do it in hand. You can stitch it just like this. I find it cramps my hand, so I use a hoop for everything I do. So it doesn't matter, and it really truly doesn't matter, however makes you feel best.
You'll want to have a pair of scissors, and any scissor that will cut your thread will be fine. So just, even your kids' scissors, if you have those, embroiderers tend to collect scissors that look pretty. So here's a pair of tiny little stork scissors, and then another pair. These actually have a little rabbit on them. I think Debbie's got
I have just, these are my travel scissors that I take when I go so I can attach them to myself. I found that I took some stitching to the hospital when a friend of mine was sick, and I kept poking it with scissors, so I had to go get something that had an end to it.
And you'll want to have some type of pin to transfer your pattern. And so this is just something that you can find in a craft store or Joann's stores. It's a Mark Be Gone pin. It's like a blue felt tip pen. Only the ink will wash out with just water. So when you're finished with your embroidery, if any of the blue ink still shows, you can just dampen your towel slightly and it will fade away.
And if you want to be lazy and cheap, get yourself just a regular pencil and transfer very easy, because whatever pencil mark you make will not wash out. So you just cover it with stitches and who knows, who cares?
That's right.
Yeah. And then there's one other thing we all recommend. We have really good light in this office, but any kind of travel light, this is just the coolest little travel light, works so that you can illuminate your, okay, maybe it's gonna work, so that you can illuminate what you're stitching. A good pair of glasses always helps too. I also have, I know Liz does too, every stitcher I know has really good light wherever you sit and stitch on a regular basis. So
sitting by a window with sunlight helps a lot.
Yeah, there's a couple things that I've had to stitch outside. All right, so that's just our basic supplies. You don't need a hoop. You do need scissors. You will have to, you know, like cut things off. But if you get a special pair of scissors, here's a piece of advice. Threaten everyone in your house that if they touch them, they will be hurt, because you want your scissors to be sharp, especially if you spend money and buy some pretty ones. So, all right, so our next thing is, let's show them what we're gonna stitch.
Oh, okay. These are just a couple of tiles that I stitched a while back. Not the same pattern that you're gonna get, but on a flour sack tile. So just a cute little diagram of some ice cream, and then this is another one with some vegetables.
Liz, will you show us the back sides of that? So that's one of the things that stitchers, either you don't mind or you're just terrible. You kind of want to keep it a little nice so that if you're sharing it with somebody or using it, that you can kind of sort of see the back side. See, it's kind of nice. So don't travel with your thread. That's always a good thing. One, you end up with a long piece and it could snag on something, or it'll show through the white fabric that we're going to be using. So make sure you kind of look at it, turn it over once in a while and make sure that it isn't getting all messed around. If you're going to frame something, it doesn't really matter. As one of our really good stitcher teachers says, us Americans spend too much time thinking about our backs. Yeah. So as long as you won't see it, do anything you want with it. We're going to hear that a lot from us. Make it your own. Okay, so next, the first thing you have to do is transfer the pattern to the fabric. This is our fabric. There's instructions in your kit that shows you how to transfer. This fabric is very, very thin, so you should be able to put the fabric down over the pattern. Where's the pattern? You should be able to, and transfer the pattern right onto the fabric and put it where you want to. Put 2 or 3 things together, make it your own. Also there in the resource kit is all of our sites to go to look how to transfer, because there are dozens of ways to transfer. You can use a light box. You can improvise your own. Tell us about how you've improvised, Liz.
Oh, I've done patterns on stabilizer and just use the stabilizer on the fabric and then tear it away afterwards. Have drawn with any kind of an ink on fabric, have used stamp pads on fabric. So what else?
I split my table once. You know how you put a leaf in, put a piece of glass over it and put a light up under it. So
empty picture frame.
Empty picture frame works too. A window. A window works really well. You don't have to have it in a light box. There's all kinds of ways that you can transfer a pattern. Oh, you can also freehand this stuff. I don't, because I can't draw a straight line. But if you do art, you can put art onto any kind of fabric. Okay, so we talked about transferring. Next thing, threading a needle. Don't forget, this is a sharp, sharp, sharp needle. And they will edit this out so it won't look so darn long. We're going to use DMC, that's the company, stranded floss. In this case, this is 6-stranded floss. It has 6 strands. You can see, take it apart. We're not going to take our strands apart. We're going to thread our needle. Don't lick it. Don't lick it. That just makes it gross.
Okay, so here's an easy way to thread a needle. You fold the thread or floss over the needle and then pinch it very tight between your index finger and thumb. And then the little part that sticks out, just lay the eye of the needle over, wiggle it a little bit, and it comes through. So we don't generally like to lick our thread.
Yeah,
you get all kinds of stuff on it when you do that, but this is an easy way to thread. Now, to tie a knot at the end, you take the end of the strand, hold it with the needle, wrap it around a couple of times, pinch it again, and pull your needle through, and it's tight, so it takes a little bit of work. Keep it pinched together, pull all of the floss through, and at the end you have a nice little knot. Now you can start stitching.
Okay, let's show you how to transfer to your design.
Okay, so I've got the pattern on the tabletop and I've laid the towel over top, and I'm going to take my blue transfer pen, and as Debbie mentioned earlier, you can use any type of marking. You can use a pencil or another permanent ink pen if you want to. This one will wash out, so that's why I use it. And I want to make sure to hold my material pretty tight so it doesn't slide around. And I'm just going to trace from the back. So this is the carrot, and I've placed it in the corner of the towel. And I'm just going to lightly go around the edges, and I'm looking at it. It's probably a little bit too light. I'm going to go over that a little bit more. I don't want to do a really heavy line. Put in some of the detail and the carrot top. And then I'm just going to lift it up a little bit to make sure I've gotten everything traced. And it is on there, but it's very light, which is okay with me. I've got good light in here, but you may want to go back and make sure it's dark enough for you to see before you completely move your pattern out of the way. Okay, so we've put the carrot outline on a towel. And now I'm going to show you how to do a chain stitch. I've already threaded the needle, actually Debbie did, and put a knot at the end. So I'm going to bring that up from the bottom or the back side at any point on the line that forms the carrot. And then this is the chain stitch, so it's going to look like a chain when it's done. I'm going back in close to where I came out. Bring my needle back out. Wrap the thread around the needle and pull it tight, not too tight, just enough to take up the slack. So I have a little chain. I'm going to go back in again where this thread came out and back out with my fabric looped around, and again pull it tight. So it's mainly in and out, forming a loop around your thread, and it makes a continuous chain. When you're ready to stop this stitch, all you need to do is go down into the fabric outside of that last chain. And again, pull it tight, and that ends it. You would want to continue this all the way around the carrot as much as you could before you did this last stitch. When I get down to the end of the carrot, I'm going to show you how to knot it off in the back, and we'll start with a different stitch. So you can see my thread's kind of twisting up a little bit. When your thread does that, it starts to knot very quickly, so one method to untwist it is just to hang it down. And you probably can't see this on the camera, but let it untwist itself. Okay, so we're at the end of the carrot. I'm going to do this one last stitch, and instead of making another chain, I'm going to drop my needle down to the back. And then on the back, I'm just going to go under a section of thread and make a loop. Put my needle through the loop a couple of times and pull it tight to make a knot. Now, I can clip this off and start stitching someplace else. So this little small space will be a back stitch. And again, I'm just gonna come up, my thread's knotted, so I'm gonna come up to the front of the fabric from the back. And there's a couple of different ways you can do, actually do this. It's a running stitch, really. Mainly, it's just a series of stitches together. So I can go every other space. And then fill it in coming backwards. And I'll just move down to this line. I can do a back stitch, which is going backwards. So I come out a little bit ahead of where I want to start stitching and work my way back. And again, I'm coming up ahead and then just taking the stitch back. Hands are flying. So essentially it's just a series of small stitches in a straight line. A running stitch or a back stitch. Okay, so I'm going to show you how to do the stem stitch, which is another good outline stitch. So I've knotted my thread and I'm coming up again from the back. And I'm going to come in and then back out of my fabric. Then in ahead of the stitch and back out where that previous stitch ended.
You'll notice that Liz keeps her thread to the top of her stitching. It doesn't matter which one you do, you just want to make sure that you are consistent in it, that you always keep it up or you always keep it down. I like your whip technique, Liz.
So you can see this makes a nice, nice line. It has a little bit of texture, It has some thickness. It's a little bit thicker than just the back stitch line because you've got double the thickness of the thread there, but it's another really good way to do an outline of an object. So we got chain stitch on the top of the carrot here, back stitch or straight stitch here, and then stem stitch here. Okay, so now if you're feeling a little adventurous or confident with your needle, we're going to do satin stitch. All of these stitches that I've demonstrated, you can easily find instructions in YouTube videos and things like that. If you go online and look at it, there's lots of resources, and we're going to share a resource page with you with your kit. So you'll be able to find additional information about how to do these stitches. So I'm going to do a satin stitch for the top of the carrot, the leaves coming out the top. And again, I've knotted my thread, and I'm going to bring my needle up from the back of the material to the front. And I'm going to fill in this one leaf right here with satin stitch. So I'll pull my thread through, and essentially what I'm doing is a series of just straight stitches right next to each other. So I'm going to come in at the bottom of that leaf and come out at the top, and again pull it not too awfully tight. You don't want to crumple up your material. Back in at the bottom, again right next to that previous stitch, and back out right next to the stitch.
Liz is doing what's called a sewing stitch. I cannot do a satin stitch like that. I have to do a poke stitch where you poke it down and you poke it back up. I can't do mine mine doesn't stay nice and straight when I do a sewing stitch.
Some people like to do a fine outline of the area that they're going to do a satin stitch in first, and then they just stitch over that outline. Here I'm just using the ink marks to guide, and again I'm just putting the stitches very close to each other and trying to cover up that line. If it's done correctly, they should lay parallel in most cases. Sometimes you have to fill in an area that's curved, so at the top it's going to be a little bit different. But I can keep going and fill that all the way in, and I'll have a nice solid green leaf at the top of my carrot now. Okay, there may be some areas where you just want to put a couple of dots in, or even maybe fill in an area with some dots. So we're going to do a French knot and pretend that our carrot has some freckles or some blemishes. So again, I'm starting with a knotted piece of thread, bringing my needle up from the underside to the top, and this one's going to be a little bit difficult to demonstrate. I want to wrap my thread around my needle for a couple of turns. So sometimes it's easier if you just hold the thread taut here as it comes out, and then just wrap your needle. And then I'm going to stick my needle back in my fabric, not in the same hole, but close to it. Pull this wrapped thread tight around the needle, hold it tight, and then shove my needle down and pull it through. And what happens is I get a nice pretty little knot on the front of the fabric. So again, I bring my needle up, and Debbie's holding the hoop now, which you may find that helpful when you're doing this. Sometimes it takes a couple of hands, but holding my thread out, wrapping my needle a couple of times with it, taking my needle back into the fabric, close to but not in the same hole, and then still holding that thread tight, pulling it down through. If you put your needle back through the same hole that you came out in, your knot will go back through the hole and you'll have nothing on the front of your fabric, but you'll have a knot on the back. That's usually not the aim when we do French knots, but just to add a couple little freckles or blemishes to my carrot, or some people actually do French knots and fill in the whole space. So again, if you're feeling adventurous, try a French knot. They're kind of fun.
Okay, Now that you've stitched all of your, whatever you're stitching, whether you put on 2 or 3 little veggies, or you just did one, or you got little fancy with some of your stitches, the best thing to do is, before you do anything else, is go through and make sure that you got all your stitches done, that there's not any spaces that you want to do. Oh, one thing I want to tell you before you start stitching, and every time before you start stitching, is wash your hands. In this case, we're going to actually wash this towel, but for something that you may not wash, you want to make sure you have very clean hands and don't use greasy hand lotion, because that will transfer to whatever you're stitching. All right, so you've got this really cool little towel, and you've done all this work, and it's so pretty, and you're so proud of yourself. So what do? Put it in a drawer so you never use it. No, 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 no. What you want to do, put it in your kitchen and use it, because that's what we do this for. I used to do that. I used to put, oh my gosh, somebody went to all this work for me, and I put it away so it would always be pristine, until I started doing stitching. And then I watched people go, oh, it's so pretty, I want to keep it pristine, and put it in a drawer. And I went, but I spent all that time doing that so that you would enjoy it. So wash it, stick it out, use it. If it wears out, do another one. So, or do a lot of them. So that's what's really great about needlework, is use it. And if you really get excited about something, do it on your clothes. I want to show you something that Liz did. It's very cool. This is her necklace that she did. We took a class by Catherine Jordan, who does these amazing things. Turn it over, Liz. And you can see through it. Those are all the stitches that you see there, we did today. All right, Liz. So once you get started with embroidery, there's so much you can do. We're going to show you a bunch of different things that people did, what I call outside the hoop, or kind of outside your comfort zone. So stay tuned for a few extra tidbits that are kind of fun. Now for some fun stitching ideas. Besides stitching on fabric or clothing, how about stitching on anything that looks like a grid? Let me give you some examples. How about stitching on some baskets or netting? See, the netting looks like a grid. There's all kinds of things you can stitch on. How about an office chair? Wouldn't that look great on your next Zoom meeting? Or a fence. I've always wanted to stitch on a fence. I just think there are some cool things that people do. I've even seen pictures of people who have stitched on a park bench. I think that would be fun to do. And then how about a leaf? You could do surface embroideries on leaves. Anything you can get a needle and thread through. With a little bit of hint, a little bit of a greener leaf, a newer leaf works better than a crunchy leaf, but you can do them if you do it easy and with a lot of patience. How about a car? Somebody actually stitched on a car, just drill holes through it. You could stitch on a rusty shovel bottom. All you have to do is clean it up, drill some holes, and pretty soon you've got some really cool patterns you can stitch on. Something I've always wanted to do, this is our last one now, something I've always wanted to do is stitch on a screen door. Wouldn't that be really cool to come up to someone's house and see some needlework done on a door? All right, so now you've got a lot of ideas, you've got your pattern, transfer it, get to stitching, and really enjoy what you do. We look forward to seeing all of your pieces. Thanks for joining us. Bye-bye.